My boss unfairly fired me. By pure accident, I ended up getting the federal government interested in her business, and now she's facing prison time. I'm not the kind of person who seeks revenge. I suffer from severe anxiety disorder and bipolar disorder, so any conflict usually triggers panic attacks and deep depression. Normally, I just shrug things off and try to avoid similar situations in the future. But there's one thing I can never forgive: betrayal. This is the story of how I accidentally destroyed my former boss's business after she stabbed me in the back. I worked at a small private medical center near my home in a small town. They originally hired me to help patients with everyday tasks, cooking, cleaning, and so on. But as positions opened up, I moved up the ranks, taking on whatever responsibilities my boss, the owner, handed me. At one point, I even became the medical billing manager, even though I had zero experience. She just threw me into the role because there was no one else, at least until her daughter got out of jail. She had been in for drug charges. After her daughter returned, they moved me into data entry, which was fine by me. I'm good with numbers, type fast, and know my way around a computer. None of these positions came with any benefits. I never got a raise for taking on new duties. No bonuses either. The only raise I ever got in nearly 2 years of working there was the standard 50-cent per hour increase after 6 months. Let me give you a quick overview of the company's structure. The owner had started it about 3 years before I joined, with absolutely no experience running a business. Her sister had some business experience, but the owner felt it was her time to spread her wings and follow what she believed was God's plan for her. Hiring was a total circus. She hired family members, including her ex-husband, and gave them priority over everyone else. She also dragged her foster kids into the business, giving them management roles even though they were completely inexperienced and incompetent. Some of these managers had just gotten out of jail, or were on probation for drug offenses or other crimes. I had taken the job mainly to help myself. Sounds odd, but I had been unemployed for years because my anxiety and depression made it hard to interact with people. This felt like a good place to slowly rebuild my life and create a future for myself and my amazing wife. I was carrying a lot of debt from bad decisions. Depression makes you stop caring about the future, and I was hoping this would be my way out of that wreckage. I really put my heart and soul into the place, trying to make it better. Getting stabbed in the back like that crushed me inside. I tried opening myself up to the world, and it just ended in betrayal by someone I trusted. Because the company was small and the owner had no clue how to run a healthcare business, there were endless problems. Billing wasn't sent out on time, the network wasn't secure, patient complaints were ignored. The list goes on. As I got more involved, I started noticing bigger issues that needed urgent fixing, including a couple of serious violations involving medical insurance. One Friday, I showed up to work and started my usual database maintenance tasks. Then I went upstairs to ask the office manager, who wasn't related to the owner, thankfully, if she had any tasks for me. The owner was there too, which was odd. She was usually running errands outside the office, but it didn't seem too strange. When I arrived that morning, my computer wasn't working. Again, not that unusual. Their IT guy was the owner's current husband, not the worst guy, but look who he married. I greeted the owner and asked if there was a network issue. She said yes, so I didn't think much of it, and went back downstairs to work on easier tasks. About 15 minutes later, the owner and the general manager came into the room and said they needed to speak with me privately. I wasn't alarmed she had done that before when transferring me to a different role, so I just assumed it was happening again. She pulled out one of the company iPads. These were used for onboarding new patients, specifically to take their photos and upload them to their electronic medical records. I had been assigned to this task after the previous administrator was fired. I didn't have much experience with Apple products, but I just followed the instructions she gave me. She asked me to come closer and showed me the screen. Apparently, this iPad was registered to someone who had no connection to the facility. Later, I would find out who it was, but that's a separate story. This is unacceptable. It's a HIPAA violation, and we could get into serious trouble, she said. It was a company-owned iPad with a company-branded login screen and everything. I had no reason to believe the device wasn't secure, especially since she personally instructed me to use it exactly that way. I never thought it was my responsibility to manage the device registration. I was simply doing what I was told, the same way everyone else did. I always tried to fix problems as they came up, especially urgent ones, to avoid violations or fines. So I said, "Okay, how can we fix this? I'm willing to help." She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "We're going to fix it by firing you." I just stood there, stunned, hoping I misheard. I asked, "You're firing me?" She said, "Yes," and I swear there was a slight smirk on her face when she said it. I looked over at the general manager. She was either crying or trying very hard not to. I asked why I was being fired for something that wasn't my fault, something I had done under her direct orders. The owner didn't answer. She just told me I had to leave. I had a good relationship with almost everyone in the office, except her family members. So I said my goodbyes, hugged some people, and cried. The whole time, the owner stood behind me with that disgusting little smile on her face. At that moment, I realized this wasn't going to end well for her. Now, on to the problem she created for herself. I was friends with nearly everyone at the facility, including the counselors. One of them had been thinking about quitting for a while, and I had always encouraged him to hang in there, telling him things would get better soon. I got fired on a Friday. That following Monday, I found out from another former coworker that the counselor quit immediately. I can't say for sure he left because of what happened to me, but the timing was suspicious. After him, another employee left, then 2 more. In the end, the owner was left with just 2 counselors to handle both inpatient and outpatient treatment. One of them had just returned from maternity leave. I really felt bad for her because she was great to work with, and the other had only worked outpatient, never inpatient care. I like to think the owner triggered her own downfall, but I can't say for sure. Since I had worked pretty much every position in the company, I knew all the dirty secrets, how much money they were still chasing from insurance companies, what tech issues they faced, and most importantly, the serious legal violations they had going on. When I started working with the databases, the security flaws became painfully obvious. I immediately reported them to the owner, hoping she would fix them. Technically, the electronic medical record system had no access restrictions. This meant literally anyone, even the janitors, could view sensitive patient notes and consultation details. Worse, it was super easy to hack. Anyone could log in from any computer, even their personal laptop at home. I flagged this and other violations of state law to the owner, urging her to take action. For example, employees couldn't get access to updated Department of Homeland Security regulations or standard operating procedures, which is mandatory. The organizational side was no better. New patient intake happened in an old storage room, surrounded by cardboard boxes filled with patient files, with names clearly visible on the boxes. If more than 1 or 2 patients came in at the same time, they were sent to fill out paperwork in the dining area. Yes, where people ate and walked around constantly. Imagine coming into inpatient treatment and having your bags inspected in the cafeteria. The accounting department was located right next to the therapy room, and the door was often left open. Patient names were discussed out loud, and because the walls were paper thin, patients in therapy sessions could easily overhear private information. The incident logs weren't updated regularly. In short, the whole place was a disorganized mess. I even tried to organize years' worth of neglected client files myself. I planned to scan and sort them all. But the worst part? I found out the owner and her daughter were inflating insurance bills for elderly clients, and both were using illegal substances. I can't say with 100% certainty that the owner was using, but I personally saw her daughter take a prescription drug from the clinic's stock. As for the owner, a former employee who had quit without notice had already accused her of drug use. The day I got fired, I came home in shock. I just sat down at my computer and cried. I had given everything to that place, sacrificing countless hours of my time. Sure, overtime was technically paid, but if you worked extra hours, you got scolded for it. I stayed late almost every week to get the work done, completely neglecting my mental health all for the sake of that job. At first, my sadness turned into pure rage. I'm not someone who gets angry easily, but when I do, it's serious. So I started taking action. After applying for unemployment benefits, I began making calls. I reported the facility to the Department of Health, listing every patient privacy violation I knew about. They gave me the standard line, "We will contact you if anything changes or if we need more information." After that, I started calling every insurance company I could think of. I gave them the clinic's tax ID and NPI number, the unique identifier for healthcare providers. I knew all that info from when I was handling medical billing. I asked the insurers to review their contracts with the clinic and double-check what services they were being billed for. By the time I finished all the calls, I was completely drained. Update. A few weeks later, I logged into my unemployment account to check if my payments had come through, and I saw a notification. My account was frozen. The employer had reported that I was fired for gross negligence and misconduct. The unemployment office contacted me, asked a few questions, and initially ruled in my favor, meaning I'd keep receiving benefits. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Thought it was over. Yeah, right. Soon after, I got a letter in the mail. The employer had filed an appeal. If the judge ruled against me, not only would my benefits be cut off, but they'd start clawing back everything I'd already been paid straight from my future paychecks. Cue a couple of panic attacks. I buried myself in paperwork, reading laws, studying the owner's evidence, and taking detailed notes on every inconsistency and lie in her statements. I also started reaching out to old coworkers from that job. I contacted one former colleague, the same woman who had quit without notice, and asked if she'd be willing to testify on my behalf. At first, she agreed, but later backed out. Turned out, she was already a key witness in another investigation against the same company. Her case involved the consulting side of the business. Let me break it down as simply as I can without too many technical details. There was a specialized consultant at the clinic who was the only one legally allowed to provide certain services. When she left, they replaced her with a trainee consultant who was supposed to work under the supervision of a qualified director. Problem was, the owner didn't have the necessary qualifications, yet she kept advertising, providing, and billing for those specialized services anyway. Back to my situation. I hadn't spoken to this former coworker in a long time, so I explained what had happened to me. She told me it was absolute nonsense, and that both she and many others had used the company tablets the same way I did. I also asked if she recognized the name registered to the iPad I had been accused of mishandling. She asked me if I was sure I remembered the name correctly. I told her I was 100% sure. Then she dropped the bomb. The name belonged to a former patient. This coworker had been with the clinic since day one, so I had no reason to doubt her. Which meant the owner had either bought or stolen an iPad from a former patient, didn't wipe the data, and gave it to employees to use, sending confidential patient information through it directly to the company servers. I immediately called the Department of Homeland Security to update my original complaint and add this new information. The day of the unemployment appeal hearing, I was a nervous wreck, shaking with panic. Then my phone rang. It took everything I had not to scream when I heard the owner's disgusting, smoke-damaged voice. I was sitting there surrounded by papers, law printouts, and all the evidence I had collected. And that's when she started messing up big time. Later, I found out that the owner wasn't even planning to attend the hearing herself. She went her way to a different court case that day. Instead, she sent her daughter, the clinic's billing manager, to represent her. The daughter showed up completely unprepared. No notes, no evidence, absolutely nothing. Apparently, they were so confident they'd win by default, they decided to just wing it. The judge started asking the daughter questions, and that's when the owner couldn't help herself and began feeding her answers. The judge had to tell her multiple times to stop interfering, reminding her she wasn't listed as a witness and didn't officially represent the company. She kept trying to butt in, but eventually had to leave after about 15 minutes because she had another court hearing to attend. That left the daughter completely on her own. Now here's a crucial point. In my state, if you file an appeal, the burden of proof is entirely on you. Apparently, the owner and her daughter didn't know that because they came completely unprepared. The judge asked them, "What exactly happened?" And they just started lying. So obviously that the judge pointed out the inconsistencies himself and even reminded them they were under oath and that lying could lead to perjury charges. The final nails in the coffin were the questions I asked the daughter. Was I the only one using that device? I don't know. But you knew enough to fire me over it, right? Was the device new or used? I don't know. Then how was it registered to someone else? And do you know that person? I don't know. It's a former patient. And it went on like that. At one point, the judge even asked, "Wait, what specific law did he break?" The daughter responded, "He violated the healthcare insurance law." "Okay. Can you cite the exact state law he violated?" "Number. Could you wait like 30 minutes? I'll call my mom and ask." "No, you had more than enough time to prepare your case." I was just sitting there smiling, knowing I had already won. The judge told us a written decision would be mailed within 5-7 days, or sooner if he made a quick ruling. 2 days later, I got the letter. I had won the case. Now, that was great news, but it gets even better. During the hearing, the daughter accidentally triggered even bigger problems for the company. The iPad situation was flagged and reported to the Department of Homeland Security as a potential violation of healthcare law. About a week later, I got a call from a private investigator asking for an official statement about the iPad. I explained that I had already filed a detailed complaint months ago. He responded with the usual line, "If we have any further questions, we'll reach out." I figured that would be the end of it, until I got another letter in the mail. I saw the DHS logo and immediately panicked, thinking they somehow found a way to overturn my unemployment appeal. But it wasn't from my state's DHS, it was from the federal department. I nearly passed out opening that letter. It said that my complaint had been fully investigated and escalated to the federal level. I didn't even know how to react. I never intended for things to go this far. I had no idea how much trouble the owner was now in. And that's where things stand today. According to a few former co-workers I still keep in touch with, the owner is now seriously ill and hasn't been showing up at the office. She also lost a bunch of other court cases and is apparently facing prison time for insurance fraud. Her daughter could also be facing jail time for violating her probation after getting caught using substances again. One coworker told me that after everything came out, several more employees quit, not wanting to get caught up in the fallout from the illegal activities. Many of those employees already had criminal records, and when it comes to healthcare fraud, there's no forgiveness. Companies get shut down, and people go to prison. Yeah, looks like this story is headed for a pretty wild finale. That's it for now. Let me know what you think about this story down in the comments. It's pretty obvious that the author got incredibly lucky. Not many people walk away from a firing with such a major victory. Maybe you have your own crazy stories too. Feel free to share them with us. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. Check out our other videos right here, and good luck out there.